you a child of God. You got purpose. The law put it there, and nobody can take it away.
These books are for white folks. They're full of things your kind wouldn't understand. You're a special boy, Nathaniel. Study hard here.
Your slaves sure do know how to behave.
Well, they God-fearing. One of them's a preacher.
People might pay good money to have them calm down a bit, especially by one of their own.
I lead you to Peter 2:18. Submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh. I'm Nat. What you think you're doing, boy? I asked you a question.
You're done preaching for a little while. Learned your lesson, boy?
Oh, yes. I've learned.
To watch a strong man broken down is a terrible thing.
The Lord's spoken to me. Visions of what's to come. A rise of good against evil.
What are we gonna do?
We'll fight. But once it begins, our brothers and sisters will join. And we'll number in the hundreds, thousands even.
And we'll rise up. I like the waves. We'll rise up.
You fight.
In spite of the ache, we'll rise up.
You fight for us all.
We'll do it 1,000 times again.
I pray you sing a new song. Let the high praise of God be on the mouths of the saints and a two-edged sword in their hand to execute vengeance on the demonic nations. Sing to him a new song.
And we'll rise up. I like the waves. We'll rise up. In spite of the ache, we'll rise up. And we'll do it 1,000 times again.
You're waiting on something. You're waiting on us.
We will rise.
Congratulations. Thank you so much for being here. And I feel so bad because I just interrupted your beautiful voice. That was amazing.
Oh, you can
Every
sing.
time I hear that song.
She was singing. Did you hear her? Beautiful.
She can sing.
She can sing. Ooh. Nate, 8 years, my friend, right? 8 years?
It is surreal that it's coming to an end, that we're actually here.
What does that feel like to
Not
have
over.
8 years of work kind of come to an end? A lot of people sometimes when they say they make a film, it doesn't feel as thrilling when it's over because you're kind of like, you've been doing this for 8 years and now it's done.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I still will wake up in the middle of the night in cold sweats thinking I'm going into prep. And I'll be like, oh, is the movie made? You know, and then I have to like recalibrate.
Like me in college finals. Like, 30 years old, like, oh my God, here we go.
Yeah, but really the relationships, you know, we've built such wonderful relationships. And as this goes on, it's been 8 years, but I think this is going to stay with me for the rest of my life.
How did it start for you? When did the germ of this idea come to fruition for you?
Well, I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia, about 42 miles east of where the revolt happened, and I never learned about Nat Turner. So in my adulthood, when I learned, I thought to myself, man, if I had a hero when I was young that looked like me, that contributed to the fabric and the narrative of America, it would have changed the way I led my life and just the things I believed and my self-confidence and self-esteem. So when I became an artist, I said, if there's any story I want to tell, it's the Braveheart-esque story of Nat Turner.
I think hero is an appropriate word here too, and especially for how you set about telling this tale. As realistic and as harrowing the story of slavery is, in many ways, this is a hero's journey. Can you talk about sort of developing the story for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Usually when we deal with the period of slavery, we don't deal with it within the context of liberation and fighting against injustice. Is usually, you know, through very evil white people and subservient and docile black people. But when you learn about slavery, which we didn't learn about in school, but the real slavery in the history of this country, you learn that it was way more complex. And to find a man that was a man of God, was a man that stood against the oppression, that sacrificed everything for a freedom that he would never be able to enjoy, those are the characteristics of a hero, and those are the things that I wanted to celebrate with this story.
And far more insidious as well. I feel like what you did with Armie and Penelope's characters, which is you created slave owners that have a conscience. And I'm curious, as actors, do you think it's more or less difficult to play slave owners that have a conscience? Because you don't get to be a villain in this case, but you are committing villainous acts as these characters.
I mean that's a really interesting question. I think when your conscience is awakened and morality is at play, then yeah, I think it's very difficult because you know that there's injustices that are happening, and so that was what was so hard for me in the conflict that my character goes through. It was so complicated because she takes this boy under her wing. She sees the demise of her son, the corruption that happens. She sees the atrocities that are happening, and there's only so much she can do at that time.
Well, she herself has so little power in that world as well.
Exactly. I mean, it was the 1800s, and women, were also, oppressed in their own way. And so she thought she was doing something noble and good, but then there were always consequences to that. And it was just so conflicting for me emotionally. But that's what made it beautiful. It just made it real. It made it authentic. They were human beings. They weren't stereotypes. And
Armie, do you want to fill that question?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think what Nate said before about it being a little bit more complex than I think a lot of the archetypes are presented to us, like slave owner, bad, evil, malicious white person. But at the same time, when you see a character like Samuel, he was born with every good intention. He, for all intents and purposes, wanted to be a good person. He just had the incredible misfortune of being born and raised in a time where slavery was the social and economic system of the day. And it's a system that corrupted and perverted everything it touched, including Samuel. And you see the more successful he actually became within that system, the more of himself he had to sacrifice or compromise with, to the point where by the end, I mean, he barely recognized anything of the guy. Whatever is left of Samuel that he hasn't drowned out with booze or anything like that, it's just hard to look in a mirror. I mean, and it was there on the page, and it was just our job to kind of bring it to life.
And Samuel also says something I think really important about the insidiousness of institutional racism as well, in the sense that he is empathetic to the slaves that work on his plantation, but at the same time, when he's confronted with their dignity and with pride in their own dignity, he then becomes even more a part of the system to break them down. And that's when you sort of end up seeing real racism, which I think shows parallels with how we talk about white supremacy today. And was that an intention on your part going into making this film?
Absolutely, and you are so impressive.
You better come on. I'm like, really, I'm about to give you a hallelujah.
Right, I'm like.
Note cards, y'all, note cards.
No, right. But absolutely, it speaks to the power of confronting systemic crisis, white supremacy and systemic racism. Far too often we point to the bad apple in the barrel, not recognizing that the entire barrel is corrupt because of the system that the barrel exists in. So often we see that now. In 2016, we're like, oh, that was a couple bad apples making us all look bad. No. Unfortunately, there's a system in play that we all have bought into, and through our cognitive dissonance, we walk through that space without ever even looking to the left or right, which makes us just as complicit as everyone else. So what we're trying to do with this, rather than giving people a way out where they can look and be like, well, I would have been like that white person, that slave owner, I would have been that type. Well, you'd have owned flesh. You'd have been dealing in bondage. So you would have been complicit, no matter how good you would have been. So, when Penelope talks about that, like trying to navigate that space, doing a good thing by teaching this young man to read, as long as you're owning people and you're not standing against that system, you don't have the courage to speak out against it, with whatever your occupation is, then you're perpetuating whatever it is that system creates. And that is what, the hope overall that I wanted us to take out of this as Americans, as people who call themselves patriots. I always say if it's patriotic to want to see the oppressed not oppressed. A healthier black community is a healthier United States of America. But we all have to chip in, So the hope for the film is that it would have themes that could transcend time. That there's a line by Aja that she can let her speak to, where she says,
"They're killing black people everywhere just for being black."
Right.
And that line, while obviously it attests to the time, it also is intended to be a parallel to what's happening right now, very, very directly so. What did it feel like for you when you read that on the page and you knew you were going to have a chance to say a line like this in this context?
I mean, when we were shooting it that day, it didn't hit me as much as it hits me now when I watch the film over and over again, because now, I just watched it again a couple weeks ago, and looking at it, it's like, wow, is that 1831 or is that 2016? And there is something that is so terrifying about that it still resonates so well to this day. That is scary, that we are living in that truth.
Did you ever worry when you were creating the Jackie Earle Haley's character? Because in that character, you have a villain. You have essentially a villain, which is necessary for a hero's story, for a Braveheart-style hero's story. Did you ever worry that that would take away from or negate the arguments that you were making about the institutional aspects of racism?
Not at all. You know, Jackie Earle Haley's character,
great Jackie Earle.
the great,
by the way.
In a sense, he represents law enforcement of the day. You know, anyone that does any history into law enforcement recognizes that the first police officers, you know, South Carolina, were, you know, slave patrollers. You know what I mean? It's like, so if you understand that dynamic, then it's not so far-fetched to understand that there is a damaged relationship between law enforcement and people of color that has been here for hundreds of years. So in creating that character, I didn't create someone that's, again, he wasn't someone that said, I'm going to beat black people because they're black. I'm going to tear up black skin because it's dark. He was, in his opinion, restoring order, right? Protecting the people in the community, patrolling in a way that would make sure that order was not turned into chaos, right? If you could sit down that character, let's just say we could make him real and put another chair and give him a mic, and you asked him, Ray Cobb, who's fictional, you know, do you think you're a bad person? I don't think that he would say he was bad. I think he would say, well, without me, then what would order look like?
He's restoring law and order.
2016. Yeah. You know what I mean? I just like, I don't think cops walk out like, I'm going to kill black people just because it's fun. I don't think that. There's an assumption of guilt. There's an assumption of danger associated to specifically black men. And there's a fear that's associated with that they have to grapple with every day. And that is systemic. You know, and there's another scene that I'm not going to tell you about where something happens to the man in the shed. You know, it's a scene that people will be talking about. Again, here's a man that said, look, if I am to operate in this system, if I'm to feed myself and feed my family, then this man has to eat and he has to work. And if he doesn't, then I am to starve. I just don't believe. So I kind of shy away from the word villain. I think everyone, they do what they do for their reasons. They just do. And I think that it makes for better storytelling when you look for the humanity, even in the people that seem like the most evil.
Colman, I mean, actually, really everybody on the stage. This is a very broad question, but it's a question that I always have when I saw 12 Years, and I had it in watching this, which is, what is it like emotionally to portray a slave being brutalized? Because you're actors and you get to do action sequences, you get to do scenes where your character is getting brutalized in some movie. But the context that this takes place, this historical context that this takes place, does that weigh on you even more?
It weighs on you heavily, actually. I mean, especially we started our shooting, we did all night shoots for the first week. And so we were really deep in the darkness, and we're on these plantations as well. And you start to wonder, we would really just connect with each other for dinners and things like that, and we all were like, you knew we were feeling something, but you didn't know exactly what. We've all done our research, we've all done our detail work as actors, but then nothing prepares you for working on a plantation. There's nothing that prepares you for the psychic trauma that's actually there. If you are an open spirit, as artists are, you're calling on things that you can't even describe. You're calling on, you know, that thing that's in the air, that's in the soil, that's in the trees, and you're allowing it, because you must allow it, to tell their stories. And that does weigh on you. And you take it with you everywhere. And then after a while, you're reaching for each other even more so. We were reaching over dinners and making sure that we were touching each other left and right, every single one of us, because we knew that we need to hold each other up. But it was an honor to take that on as well, because, you know, we didn't have to live it. You know what I mean? So it was an honor. It was like, it's my duty to take it on as a descendant of slaves.
It seems like it could be something that's a bit more difficult to walk away from at the end of the day. Is that true?
I think what I felt at the end of the day is what Colman expressed. Like, I felt like I had done a good thing. I felt like I went home and went into my, you know, cushy, lovely hotel at the Hampton Inn in Savannah, you know, well taken care of. Thank you very much. And I earned my paycheck, because I've always felt like I always seek those opportunities where I feel like my purpose and my paycheck converge. And Birth of a Nation was that experience for me, where I could go home, look myself in the mirror, and be proud of what I did that day.
Absolutely. Talk about the title. It seems obvious to me as to why you would call it Birth of a Nation, but for those who don't know, The Birth of a Nation is the title of not just a film about the founding of the Ku Klux Klan, but for what many consider the original narrative feature-length movie, D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation.
That's right, and it's significant. You know, the very first feature film, D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation, based on Dixon's The Klansman, was a film written by a son of the Confederacy, really in response to the enfranchisement of black people, post-slavery and Reconstruction. And basically, between 1870 and 1875, we saw more elected people of color from local all the way up to national government than at any moment, even up until now. And so there was this feeling that that white people were losing their privilege, that they were losing the South, that the country was being turned upside down in a way that would elevate people of color above their white counterparts. So he made this film as a battle cry for white America to embrace white supremacy as a form of self-preservation. Now, why is that significant now? Well, we work in Hollywood, right? So, you fast forward 2016, 14, 13, 12, and we're having conversation about diversity. We're having conversations about race. We're having conversations about the type of stories, who's telling the stories, how they portray people of color, without recognizing that we are still tethered to a foundation that thrived on denigrating people of color, and that is the original film, D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation. So in taking that film, which was also used to take the KKK that was all but dead in 1875 up to over 4 million in 1915, 16, and 17, a film that was screened in the White House, that was praised by our president, but is responsible for thousands and thousands of lynchings of people of color in this country. We're taking that title, we're squeegeeing it off, we're washing it and rinsing it, and we're attaching it to a true American hero, someone that is inspired, in my opinion, and what can inspire from this film, I hope, is the birth of a new nation of storytellers, or people that are accountable, of people that are going to stand in the gap with their occupations. So it was very intentional, and one, pointing to it so people know it's there, so they can see basically the root of the trauma, but also so they can say, that is no longer us. Let's break new ground, throw away that foundation, lay more foundation. So moving forward, we don't have to play old tapes of this man's reimagining of what he thought America could be, but we can, present the America we want to see for our children and our children's children.
Nat Turner is there you go. Nat Turner is a preacher in the film, and quite often he invokes Christ and his Christian faith for the purpose of the revolt. And you're a Christian man as well. I'm curious, when you were writing these scenes with Nat Turner invoking Christ, if you felt as though you were also invoking your ideas of Christ for the purpose of telling Nat Turner's story.
Well, absolutely. I'll say it like this. The point of, what I believe, the point of being a Christian is to aspire to be Christ-like. And I don't mean the Europeanized, sanitized, white Christ. I mean the European Christ that has inspired so many to come to the cross, I will say. And so in that respect, yes, I wasn't trying to be like Nat in the sense. I was trying to understand what it's like for a man to sacrifice everything, to have the patience and discipline to wait on what he believed to be the messages of the Lord to move forward. One thing I want to be clear with this, I don't think this was a film about at all. I mean, I can tell you it's not a film about a black man killing white people because he was mad. This is not a revenge tale. It's not black people killing white people because they're white. It's a man saying, seek ye first the kingdom and all these things will be added. Liberation being one of them. In that sense, I will cut the head from the serpent in the same way that I've seen it done in this Bible biblically throughout these pages. So I feel like it was an obedience, even to the point where he relied on the strength of women, even for his yes. His grandmother said, I watched your grandfather die. He fought for liberation. He died doing it, but I was so proud. He went to, his wife, and he said, look, Lord's called me to stand. What do? He went to his mother. She said, I'm proud of you. It was as if they were checkpoints along the way that, in my opinion, added to his faith, added to his obedience, gave him the strength to really make the ultimate sacrifice.
So 8 years, as we said at the beginning of this, it took you 8 years to make this. You say you've built these relationships and formed these bonds with everybody here. When did all of you guys sort of sign on to this movie? Was it one of those situations where you had written the script and then 3 years, and then everybody who had signed on was able to come and start shooting it, even though they had signed on 3 years earlier?
Something like that. We had no money. So when you have no money and you just have paper and you go to people like, so look, I'm doing this movie, right? And you're perfect for it. They're like, okay, well, what is it? You're like, it's it's a script. It's going to be a movie. Like, okay.
The birth of a nation.
It's the birth of a nation. My very first hire was Colman Domingo. I had the privilege of working with him on Red Hook Summer. I tell the story, we didn't work together on the same day at Red Hook Summer, so the first time I saw his work was when I saw the film, and I was so incredibly moved that I reached out to him, and he was like, oh, thank you, brother, let's keep in touch. I was in New York, and he was doing a play off Broadway, Blood Knot, that's right. And I sat front and center and watched this man's work, and when he got done, and I was waiting for him after he came out of I remember we were upstairs. I remember everything about that day, because it was, you know, when you write a story and then someone walks into your vision, that's it. So he came out of that door, and I was like, you're going to be in my movie. You know, and so then we didn't have the money. So, like, months were passing, and more months, and he called me, and I let you go.
And I would just say, like, so I'm about to take this job in Europe for a few months. Should I take it? Or
no.
Okay, well, how about I'm going to do this other thing real quick, but should I take that?
No.
All right, let me ask you one more time. When is this thing going to happen? But, you know, but for the things that you really want to do, you hold a space in your heart, you hold a space with your team, you hold a space in your pocketbook, and you say, I'm going to do this whenever you're ready, and we're going to make it happen. So, yeah.
And then a quick thing with Armie. And so Armie and I, his agent, and I are very close. We've worked together before. So I called, and I was like, you think Armie would be interested in this? He was like, well, he's getting on a plane. And he was like, let me reach out. Let me send it to him. I'll let you finish.
He said, yeah. He sent me the script, and I read the script, and I put it down, and I go, that is the most incredible story I've ever read in my life. There's no way that's true. And then I got on my computer, typed in Nat Turner, and sure enough, it was true. And I just started to get like more and more angry about it. I was like, I took American history in high school. How come I haven't heard this story? This is the most American story that I've ever heard. It's about the rising up of oppression. It's about resisting tyranny with the ideals of freedom. I mean, that is what this country was based on. So I said, yeah, who wrote this? Let's talk to this guy. And he goes, Nate, you want to sit down and talk with him? And we sat down and we had breakfast, and he sat down, and it was just like, boom. I mean, I could just feel this all coming off of him. And like, I don't even know if I ate anything at breakfast. Like, I was just like, yeah, I'll do your movie, dude. No problem. I'll do whatever you want. It just like whatever he had, like his passion for it, I was like, I'm following you. Whatever you want to do. And then we were attached for a while.
Yeah. And so I got them when I didn't have any money. And so then when the money started coming in, I had the blessing of being able to cast these wonderful women to my right. We
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with Asia, we read so many people, right? And so every time it came to read Asia, she would like cancel on me. She probably canceled on me like 4 times. In fact, one time I was in New York, and I was in the casting office for her, and everything's set up, and I got a call and was like, oh yeah, so she's going late, she's not coming. I was like, wait, what? I was like, what is going on? But it made me want to meet her more. It's that thing, right? Typical. And when I met her, and when she read, I was on this location scout on my own dime, because I went broke for this movie. But anyway, we were in, and we did a Skype, and we talked, and I just was like, when you know, I'll let you speak to it. I'm kind of trying to set it up.
I mean, I was starting to feel like the universe was conspiring against me. I was like, why can't I just get into the same room or at least get on the same Skype call with this man? Like, why isn't it happening? And I realized, I just remembered in that moment that I feel like there are times in your life when things don't go easily, when there are obstacles in order to get there. And it's because God wants you to remember how hard it was to get there so that you can appreciate it even more. And so us finally getting on that Skype, finally getting in the same room, it was meant to be. It was meant to be. And I remember how hard it was to get there so that I could appreciate the process of doing this film together.
Absolutely. I remember a year and a half ago, I interviewed you when you were promoting Beyond the Lights, and I said, well, what are you working on next? And you said, I'm directing a movie. I said, oh, you're directing a movie? That sounds cool. And I said, what's it called? And he goes, The Birth of a Nation. It's about slavery. I went, that's going to be fucking dope, man. and it is. Congratulations. It opens this Friday. Nate, congratulations. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Thank you for having us.
So great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.